Back here on the Cover 3 podcast as we continue with our big game breakdown, looking at the Saturday afternoon tilt between Alabama and Florida State in Tallahassee. We got the Knoll boys, so that's where we've got to start. DK, where does this matchup hinge?
This one, I think the start of this game is huge for Florida State. Like, you have to handle the initial onslaught of what you're going to get thrown at you. And I think specifically it's the physicality up front on both sides of the ball. Because you look at Alabama's offensive line, they're mammoth. Parker Brailsford and Caden Proctor, that side of the line's pretty impressive. They're going to want to run the football. And then for the offense, the thing about Gus Malzahn and the thing that we've heard about it all season long is they want to be more committed to the run. They want to be a physical team that can run the ball downhill. Can they establish that versus an Alabama defensive front, which is one of the better ones in the SEC? So again, I thought it was going to be a similar storyline almost all these games. But that is a disparity that Florida State's going to have to manage throughout the entire game. But I do think it's critical for them to stay in this game early and to be able to try to establish some drives. And I do think, that's one thing where I think Gus and Norvell together should be pretty good at scripting some plays early to kind of figure out some of the deficiencies, maybe some misdirection, some counters, get them a little bit, off balance somewhat to try to take advantage of. Because I don't envision them just running it right down their throat. So I think kind of the start of the game is huge for me to watch out for, and then how they handle the physicality of both of those offensive and defensive lines for Alabama.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Danny. I do think you'll see FSU go tempo. That's not insider info. I just think Gus offenses suck when they don't use tempo. So, like, that offense works a whole lot better. It's like not that complex when the defense doesn't have a lot of time to check. So if you're playing to win the game, and you're not playing just to minimize the magnitude of the loss, then I do think you start out with tempo. Now, if you're getting your ass kicked, then maybe you pack it in. You realize you're going to need Castellanos healthy for 11, 12 ball games this year if you're going to have the record that helps you not get fired. But I think you of course start by playing to win the game. So I do think you will start with tempo. For me, one of the things Bama's going to have to figure out is how much of this is Malzahn's offense and how much of this is Norvell's offense. And I don't mean who's calling it, but I mean, like, if you're Florida State, clearly you're going to line up in some Malzahn formations and run some Norvell concepts. If you're going to line up in some Norvell formations and run some Malzahn concepts, I think, just because what are you actually having your defense look at if you're Kane Womack at Alabama, the defensive coordinator? I don't know. Probably going to have to study UCF's offense, but also a little bit of what Florida State's been running, just because you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. You don't truly know. That's going to be interesting. I think Florida State did a really nice job of getting a lot of experience onto this team, but I don't think the transfer portal was very good overall, and they needed a lot. So it's not like they went out and got like one stud on the lines of scrimmage. So I don't know how the lines of scrimmage matchup is going to go. I have a hunch that it's going to go poorly for FSU. I think Bama's probably potentially the best line of scrimmage team in the country this year. So, like, that's not a great matchup in my opinion. But Jaden Roberts might not play for Alabama. He's one of the better guards in the country. He's been out with what is believed to be a concussion. We'll see how he plays. They like Deuce Robinson a lot, and I think they hit on him. So, like, that's their receiver one. They like Boggs a good bit in the slot. Like, he's an interesting, I don't know if he's a great pro prospect. Doesn't really matter. I think he's a very useful, like, college type prospect here. So, curious to see how they get him involved. It's a very experienced offense. It's not a very, very experienced offense as far as playing together. And they got almost nothing done in spring because all their linemen were hurt. So let's just say I think it's very advantageous that they get those two FCS games, FCS level opponents after this to kind of have a bit of a regroup in case they need it.
I don't know if you guys know this or if the tailgate knows this, but I do like to troll you guys about Florida State. Like, I've done that a little bit over the recent years.
No.
Yeah, and this is not trolling. This is empathy. I think Florida State is, if you look at their roster, like, they're not on the Miami Clemson tier as far as talent. I don't think. Like, just looking at like recruiting rankings, looking at their bodies, looking at all that stuff. And the problem is when I look at the roster, well, I still think it's probably the third most talented team in the league. It's looking far more like SMU and Louisville these days than it is to Clemson, Miami. And I think that's a huge problem, which I think needs to be handled and will be handled eventually if they can't handle it now. So for this matchup against Alabama, who is one of the best teams in the country as far as talent is concerned, this is a horrible matchup for me for Florida State. I don't think you mentioned the line of scrimmage. I don't think Florida State can hang with Alabama along the scrimmage in this game, and I think that they're going to have to find ways to scheme around that. And they've got Thomas Castellanos, but for me, like, it's a Gus Malzahn offense, which is great when you've got really talented players and you're out ahead. When you're in a game like this where you're probably going to be trailing and you need Thomas Castellanos in this passing game to get you back into it, I don't know. Like, the defense is going to have a huge day. They're going to have to force turnovers. You're going to have to hope, like, make Ty Simpson look as ordinary as a lot of people seem to think Ty Simpson truly is. I don't know if I agree with it. We'll see. You got DeBoer, you've got Nate Grubb. I think that they'll do a pretty good job of teaching Ty Simpson where to put the ball and win. But unless you force Alabama into a lot of mistakes and get yourself some great field position, or if you make some plays on special teams, get some big returns, like, I just don't know how this current Florida State roster can hang with Alabama for 60 minutes. Like that, having it at home is a huge boost, and you're going to need that kind of atmosphere and that crowd to keep you in there. But I don't know, man. This is just a really big ask for me for Florida State.
I don't know that this number is stealing, right? I mean, you're talking about something that's been bet out to 14 on the road with a quarterback making his first ever start. New stadium, going to be rocking. Like, that's still a really big number to cover, but that's more for Thursday's discussion. Today is like about how do they win the game. We don't know Ty Simpson will play well.
Right.
I think he probably will, but we don't know that. We don't know that Alabama's defense is going to play better against some of the option looks than they did last year. I mean, if I'm Florida State, I'm looking a lot at what Vanderbilt did to this defense. And Bama has the stories out of how their culture last year wasn't it. Now the culture's all better, but of course they're going to say that. What are they going to say? No, the culture still sucks? No. So I put zero stock in any kind of article where a guy's like, oh, the culture is much better this year. Because it could be true. It could be bullshit. We just don't know. So we'll see if Alabama has better discipline on defense this year, if they like each other a little bit more. I do think personnel-wise, they got a lot of guys that are going to the NFL. Florida State's got a lot of guys that are going pro in something other than sports. So that's an issue, and this is certainly not one of the games that you have to get if you're Mike Norvell and you're trying to retool your roster and your team in order to avoid getting fired, which is clearly goal number one, right? Like, those games are Virginia, Pitt, Virginia Tech, at Stanford, like a weird road trip, stuff like that. I don't know that you have to win this one to have a bounce back season.
How they manage tempo. You talked about wanting to go fast. If you want to, I love going fast, but you cannot have 3 and outs. You're going fast. Like, your defense could be, and you can't have multiple 3 outs in a row. And that's a concern. So I think kind of how they manage tempo, how much success they have with tempo. Like, I've always, a lot of coaches I've talked to, you got to get the first down, when you're running tempo. So you got to make sure you're at least not leaving your defense out to dry. And I saw that last year from a totally different perspective because the quarterback play was just so inept. The defense would fight really hard, and then they're like on the field for the entire game, and they just threw in the towel. And that's just human nature to do. Yeah. So they've got to make sure they manage that tempo properly, or else it could get sideways.
But do you think this offense has any chance of scoring on Bama if it's not operating at tempo? Because I don't. Like, Matt.
No, I think
you got to try it, right? Like,
yeah, you definitely have to try it.
If it's not going well, you pack it in because you don't want to lose by 50.
Right. Yeah.
That's why I'm saying how they manage it.
And Bud, to your point about not stealing, I saw a comment in the tailgate. I would not entertain an alt line here because there is a play to not lose by 40 points at home on this huge stage. Like, that is a path where.
Which would be different than what Norvell has done. Norvell has been a very much play-to-win guy, and he has not seemed to care about the margin of loss. Like, he does make the correct call, by the analytics to go or punt, like, to win the game, which also we know the flip side of that is if it doesn't succeed, then you risk getting blown out more. Does he pull a Joey McGuire and all of a sudden, like, pack it in and just do the NFL, like, very conservative coaching thing again? I don't like that would be a new thing for him, but it's certainly in the back of his mind, maybe there is that.
Also, on the from the Vibes committee, while it brings a smile to my face, the idea that Gus Malzahn sees Alabama and he just like turns into Neo from the Matrix. Like, sure. Okay. Like he was an Alabama killer at one time. I think those Auburn teams had better personnel than the one that Florida State has right now. So again, if you're only going magic and vibes, then sure, go for it. Maybe Gus does see all the perfect play calls when he sees that crimson, but different Alabama coaching staff, different offensive personnel, all things to be considered there when thinking about the Gus versus Alabama matchup. Anything else here, or do we want to take this to Auburn Baylor?
Then
we can
watch out for James Smith on Alabama's D line. I've heard some really good things about him for some people who I think would know. I would say like FSU's run defense is a major concern in this game.
Oh, Richard Young we haven't mentioned him with Jam Miller out. Richard Young's going to be running first string, and he's from Florida, right?
So Richard's from Lehigh. I've actually seen him like play a lot of high school games.
Yeah.
On him, if your book still offers like longest rush props, he's a kind of a high variance guy. Like I don't know that he has great vision, but he is a home run hitter when he hits it. So just keep that in the back of your mind if your book does offer some of those props.
How about a little Richard Young first touchdown?
Yeah, I think that's potentially
first.
Yeah.
Are we talking first touchdown props? That's for tomorrow.